Welcome to Deep Transformation, Self-Society Spirit. I'm Roger Walsh, and our co-host is John Dupuy. And our guest today is Hameed Ali, whose pen name is A.H. Almaas. And we're continuing with our series, the Wisdom Series, A.H. Almaas Wisdom Series. Now, this is dialogue number 12, in which we are working away systematically through an overview of Hameed's work, the diamond approach, and specifically working our way systematically through one of his magnum opuses, because there are several, The Inner Journey Home. And today we're on to chapter 18, Being and Knowledge. And this goes really deep indeed. As we were preparing for our dialogue today, Hameed said, well, it could have been a book, but he didn't have the time. And so there is a lot in this. And it follows on from the previous chapter on divine love and is part of the discussion of what Hameed you call the boundless dimensions. So maybe perhaps we could start by reminding our listeners of what the boundless dimensions are. And then perhaps you could speak to pure presence, which is the core of this boundless dimension, and that will give us a lead into the many subtleties of this chapter.
Yeah. So I differentiate between, in terms of spiritual experience, experiencing the spirit or presence, between the localized experience of presence and what I call boundless dimension. Localized means experiencing presence as within you or holding you or containing you, but it is not infinite. It is localized, so it has a limitation in terms of how the extent and size and expansion.
And you would call that the soul, right, Hameed? That localized part of us?
The soul is what localizes it. The boundless dimension is the same presence we experience when we're experiencing the localized presence, except it has no end. It goes on forever, just like the sky. So boundless has no boundaries. It goes on and on and on, endlessly. So endlessly, in terms geometrically, in 3 dimensions, you could say. But as we will see in this dimension, it also includes time. So it's an infinite space-time. But we'll deal with space first.
Okay.
Too complex to deal with the time part.
Yeah. And maybe you could talk about the transition from divine love to pure presence, because you say that pure presence usually emerges subsequent to the experience of boundless love, and that often for people it's experienced this development or maturation or transcendence to pure presence is actually experienced initially as a kind of loss.
Yeah. So most people, they're easier to experience divine love before they're experiencing boundless presence, because boundless presence in some sense simpler and seem more abstract in relationship. While divine love is boundless, infinite, like an ocean of love that fills the universe, pervades the universe, fills the heart, all the heart, and shows that the love is inherent to reality, all of reality, not just human being, and not just the soul, but that's why I call it the heart of God. God has no limitation. But the divine love had the quality, specific richness and quality and color of love. It could be golden white, it could be other color. And it's like a flowing ocean, as the Sufis call a shoreless ocean. Ocean with no shores. And now the transition, but the divine love means It is presence, but presence that have the sweetness and the softness and the characteristic and the affect of love, and with all its generosity and goodness and all of that. But that shows the transition is recognizing that love is, there's two things here. There's presence and there's love, and they are inseparable. They're the same thing. And the transition happen is by the presence letting go of love, letting go of the quality of love. It becomes just the presence by itself without the characteristic of love with the softness and sweetness. So it becomes more clear, transparent, colorless, but still infinite and boundless and endless, and still presence, and I call it pure presence. Pure meaning all qualities of true nature are pure, but the pure in the sense that it doesn't have other qualities in it.
It's the precursor, right, of all the other qualities.
Yeah, so it's a precursor of love, and of course, love, divine love, can also manifest other qualities. I mean, love can become compassion or strength and can manifest that way. And so the next dimension that emerges, which in some sense seen as more fundamental in the sense that divine love is just the same thing with the addition of a quality. Here is before the addition, before the quality manifest in it. Before the quality of love and goodness, richness manifests, there is just the simplicity of just presence. I call pure being or pure presence.
And what is the experience of that? What does that phenomenologically feel like when you experience that dimension of just pure being presence?
So we discussed before the experience of presence. I discussed what the presence is like. It is like that, except it has no other qualities. And all the other qualities of presence before, like presence of compassion or love or intelligence, or here's just presence with no other quality, just pure presence, which is, and presence here is the sense of beingness. Presence shows clearly what presence means, which is the ontology, the ontological ground of reality, meaning the existential ground, the ground of existence. It's basically pure isness. A presence that feels like isness. And the experience of it is that I am this unbounded, endless, many-dimensional expanse of pure isness. It has a fullness to it. And the presence, and the fact that it is presence, gives it a sense of fullness, substantiality. But it's a fullness that has no color, no quality, just completely, just the fullness is the fullness of being.
And you make clear, Hameed, that part of this fullness of the experience of boundless presence is a profound sense of completion, a serenity and fullness, which you say there is no deficiency, no need, no want, no desire, no fear, and that this sense of this profound completeness is not the result of anything. It's inherent in presence.
Yeah, it is inherent in our spiritual nature that it is pure and complete. And here it shows that it is complete before even it manifests qualities. Not that in that sense it's complete, in the sense that it has manifest in it love and compassion and strength and clarity. And no, it's complete because all these are implicit and they haven't come up yet, but they're all in it, all potential to it. So nothing is missing. Everything that is possible, everything that is good in our spiritual nature, everything that is true in spiritual nature is implicit in it. So in that sense, it's complete. So the sense
And
of feeling in it is nothing missing, it's complete, and the richness is a sense of fullness. Fullness, the way like what do you call it? Like a strong muscle, for instance, and the fullness of the strong muscle. In that sense, the fullness is a substantial fullness, but it's not physical. The fullness is just pure presence of beingness. And so and many teaching talk about the I am.
yes,
And different people define the I am differently. Some as a localized presence, some Nisargadatta for them talk about the point of existence. I am is a point of light. Here it is, all is true, all those are I am. Here the I am is an infinite expanse, infinite in all directions.
and it is our true nature and the ground of being.
It is that, it's our true nature, yes. As the being ground of all other possibilities of true nature, yeah.
And all manifestation comes from this place of nothingness that contains as a potentiality everything, the whole universe, our thoughts, I mean, the whole thing.
Everything will come out of it. Everything is, I mean, when I say it is complete, I mean all the perfection of being, like goodness, awareness, clarity, intelligence, strength, power, fulfillment, peace. All of those are implicit in it. But none of them are explicitly that way. When they become explicit, they become those, what I call the essential qualities before.
Yeah.
These essential qualities are implicit, but they're not differentiated yet. So he said that's why I call it non-differentiated presence.
And Hameed, I want to just draw out one of the implications of what you're saying, because you're giving an eloquent description of the wholly complete fullness of presence, and that there's nothing lacking, nothing wanted within that, or within true nature, our being. And the implication is what again is one of the central teachings of every spiritual tradition, that the inherent sense of lack or deficiency that goes with identifying as being an ego or separate self sense, and for which we spend our lives seeking and consuming sensations and stimuli and things of one kind or another, is basically a compensatory mechanism for the loss of the experience of our innate completeness.
Exactly. And as you said, it is really, this dimension is the core of all mystical teaching. At the core of the teaching of Ibn Arabi, for instance, of Meister Eckhart, of Dzogchen, of Advaita Vedanta, that's the core of their teaching. All of them, and they might speak about it a little differently, but all about the divine, sometimes, I mean, Master Eckhart might call it divine being, and, so does Ibn Arabi, but Dzogchen, they just call it the presence of awareness. Advaita Vedanta will call it Satchitananda, But it's infinite, unbounded, has no limitation in any way, and complete in every way.
Yeah. And once we recognize that, and also with that recognition see that that egoic activity is this frantic, unfulfillable quest to compensate for that innate sense of deficiency that comes from our alienation from being, then the insanity of the world and all its craziness and unnecessary suffering and conflict, etc., begin to make sense in a whole different way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if anybody experiences himself that way, all that insanity will disappear. There's complete sanity here. Sanity, openness, purity,
Yeah.
simplicity, you know.
And when I was studying Buddhism, the whole idea of emptiness felt really kind of scary, like negation of everything. And the way you describe it here, it's not that at all. It's the potential of everything. And it's also can be known because it is knowing at the same time. The known and the knower are not separate. It's not like we're experiencing this, we are that. And
Yeah. So we will get to the dimension that more correspond to the Buddhist sense of emptiness. That's not where we're at.
okay.
Experiencing something different than, I mean, it's connected to it. But here it is, I mean, you bring in the emptiness, which is one way, one side of this presence. It's both fullness and nothingness at the same time, you see. But not getting deeper into, when we first experienced it, we just experienced fullness that filled the universe. That filled the universe, the feeling, I am everything, I am everywhere, and I am the fullness of being. I am the existence of all that is.
Mhm.
So it is the existential, the existence, the ground of everything. So most people think things exist because they perceive them. They could measure them, they could touch them. Here, you actually feeling that existence itself. You know existence by feeling existence, by feeling the affect of existing. That thing exists because they have an existential ground. They don't exist because they just appear in perception.
Mhm. Yeah, and you're bringing in here or pointing towards one of the next points you make, Hameed, which is the very nature of manifestation, that out of presence comes all manifestation, and that we, at least I was going to say we have, at least I had what I now recognize as an incomplete or erroneous understanding of manifestation as somehow something which manifests from, uh, but you emphasize, yes, it's that manifestation is more an out of uh, being or presence, and the
Yeah.
being or presence never leaves or is in any way separate.
Well, I think that one of the first thing about the experience of our nature this way is that there are two major ways of experiencing it. By experiencing it here, I mean being it. I don't mean there's somebody experiencing it, meaning it is experiencing itself. It is self-experiencing. So the experience here is the realization, where the soul is subsumed in it. The soul has become, you know, absorbed into it. So there is still a being like me experiencing it. So I'm not saying everybody's experiencing it. So there is that important thing that many non-dual teachings don't address, which is regardless how universal it is always experienced by a being. The mountains are not experiencing it. We don't know. It doesn't experience itself by itself. It has to have an individual being. An individual being means a soul. So the soul but the soul here is not appearing as an individual consciousness. It is implicit, is absorbed into it, but it's sort of the lens through which being knows itself. It is the instrument of perception, of knowing. But the experience here, I wanted to point to two major experiences. They're both non-dual. Non-duality in two different aspects. One is to know myself as that beingness, to recognize I am here. I am what I am, and I am pure being. I am pure existence. pure isness, that is the fullness of being. And I am infinite, boundless. And in this experience, we're not relating to forms and manifestations and individuals. I'm just experiencing to the nature itself, to the ground itself. I'm experiencing the ground itself. So the ground itself here feels infinite in all directions. And it is an interesting experience, like being the sky, except the sky is a fullness, like a gelled sky, feels a fullness, but the fullness of both awareness and that is aware of itself. Fullness that is at the same time fullness of presence, then aware and knows of itself as fullness, as being, as existence. So it has simplicity of knowing, but all it knows is I am. And there might not even be I. It could be I am, or it could be just amness, isness, So that is one fundamental way of realizing this dimension, is to be this dimension, recognize I am this dimension, always been that way, but now I know it consciously and clearly. And it's an amazing, beautiful, it is satisfying, contenting, without there being a feeling of satisfaction, like dissatisfaction is gone, discontent is gone. There's only clarity, fullness, richness of isness, fundamentality, perfection, completeness, blissfulness to it too. There's a fresh blissfulness to it because it's clean, as it's been scrubbed clean. Scrubbed, but it's the cleanness from off the beginning, before any dust alight. And this is one mode of experiencing it, from within it. This is what I say, experiencing, I call this dimension the Supreme. To give it a name, in our teaching, I call the Supreme Being. Came from Supreme Being. I think I took the term from Nisargadatta. He talks about the Supreme sometime. But anyway, many teachings talk about the Supreme. I just call it Supreme. But it is pure being, non-differentiated beingness, and it has no limits, no boundaries, no size. No, nothing limits it in all directions, all possibilities. And it is simplicity itself. It's simple isness. We recognize what simplicity is. It has nothing to do with simplicity of thought, simplicity of situation. It's simplicity of isness. It's just one thing. It's single. And it is just, I am the existence with nothing extra. So there's clarity, there is simplicity, there's an openness, lightness, and the blissfulness can be so intense, can become exuberant joy. So that is one, and it is non-dual because it's only one thing. It's not like the inseparability of two things. No, there's only one thing. There's no two that are connected. There's just oneness. One, I call it unity. This is a state of unity. Unit. There's one unit, and that unit has no end, no limits of any kind. That is experiencing the pure being from within itself. Then the other way, major way of experiencing pure being, experiencing it from the perspective of all manifestation, of all particulars, bodies and galaxies and mountains, and including emotions and feeling and thought. That's what people call manifestation. Some teaching call it appearance, Some people call it, the world or reality. So one thing as we transition from pure beingness to its relationship to all those forms, that's when we understand form is formlessness, formlessness is form. Because all the forms are forms of this formless. They're all made of the same purity of being. So it's not there. So it turns out the existence of things, their ontological ground, their beingness constitutes not just their existence, but what they are. They are made out of it completely. There's no place on them that is not pure being. So pure being is the mountain, pure being is the rocks, pure being is the metals in the mountain, pure being is the molecules in the mountain, pure being is the atoms in the molecule, pure being is the elementary particles in the atom, pure being is anywhere, wherever you go, physically or mentally, you find pure being, that it is pure being. So everything, so basically pure being is manifesting all of these things. It basically forms itself into all of these things. It's like an ocean that at its surface, it has bubbles and edges, and these are the world. These are the content of what most people experience. But here we are experiencing pure being from the perspective of what I call manifestation or phenomena or appearance. And here it's a different kind of non-duality. That's when you see that everything is not separate from anything else. I am not separate from you because we're both pure being. Pure being extends all the way through. You are a form of like a wave out of the ocean. I am a wave as an individual wave of the same ocean. So we're not separate. So that's non-dual. And so it's a different kind of non-duality, which is the inseparability of all forms, of all particulars. And the particulars extend through all possible particular, from physical manifestation, mental manifestation, from living being to inanimate matter. All of it is just pure being. And it's when we are in that condition, it's beauty. It's a beautiful thing. It's like an amazing kind of there's a sense of richness, a sense of simplicity. Everything is transparent. Like you look at everything, you see through it. And you see through it is like I look at you, I see through you. I don't mean I see the books behind you. I see you to pure being. Every surface reveals what is its inside. Its inside is the pure clarity of being. And that is non-dual again. Non-duality, one of the major ways the non-dual teaching talk about non-duality. Of course, here, the non-duality can also, there's one way non-dual teaching talk about non-duality that is implicit in both kinds. The first one I call unity. The second I call oneness. Oneness of everything. Everything is one. They're not many. Although there are many, they make up one. One fabric connected by the substance of being. Here, the other non-duality implicit in all of them is that the subject and the object and the perception are the same thing. So, the knower and the known and the knowing are all one thing, completely inseparable. And both of those kinds of unity and oneness, both kind of state of non-duality. So that's non-duality implicit in a different way. Sometimes people talk about nondual, subject and object are not separate. Because here, the subject is pure being, the object, the pure being. What is known is pure being. And the knowing is pure being. All of it is pure being. So pure being includes all of those as one thing meaning there's no other. So there we see here unity of oneness in two dimensions, from the middle of the ocean or the surface of the ocean. Middle of the ocean, the expanse itself, the beingness itself. You know what is pure being, what is existence in itself. The second one is knowing that everything is made out of that existence. Everything is a formation from within this formless ground. So that's when we see that the form is formlessness, and formlessness is form. When from the perspective, the second kind of unity, which I call oneness, because each form, if you get into it, if you just look a little deeper into it, you find the infinite formlessness. So the book behind you, each one of them is an expression of being, is being, taking that particular form. Each hair in your beard is being, taking that particular form. See?
Well, this realization is very positive. I mean, it feels like an antidote to so much human suffering, our existential and psychological and spiritual, our lostness. It seems like it.
Well, you need to remember, John, that all manifestation of true nature are antidote to suffering. True nature, whatever way it appears as pure being, pure love, or anything else, or pure awareness, I will talk about some other time, they're all have no suffering. They're all the purity of the spirit. Suffering comes from delusion, from limitation. Here we have no delusion, no limitation.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful vision that you point to, Hameed, with the recognition that all manifestation is for eyes that can see a portal to the transcendent, or is transparent to the transcendent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting sometimes experiencing from within, like I'm sitting in my room and I look and I see every wall, every object is transparent, and I look into it and I see the vast infinity of the clear, pure beingness. But everything is that. I mean, as I said, all the way to the elementary particle, because it is the beingness of anything that is. It's the isness of anything that manifests, everything that manifests, we say it exists, it is there. Scientists say, well, the mountain exists, it is there, I can measure it. But both the mountain and the measuring device and the measuring person, they're all pure being itself, manifesting in different forms.
Yeah. And our conventional worldview, including the scientific, overlooks the fundamental nature that you're pointing to. Our conventional worldview operates from the assumption, and we'll get into this, and you get into this in more detail later in the chapter, operates from the assumption of the separation of all phenomena, all things of us.
Well, the ordinary mind, which is the ego mind, appears in a scientific perspective as everything is separate. And you can measure it, you can know it, you can not know it, but Everything like a rock is just a rock, you know. An iron piece is an iron piece. It's just iron. There's nothing to it but iron, made out, maybe created in the middle of a star. It was made out of iron. From this perspective, it is iron, but it's iron that its nature is pure existence. What is the existence of the iron? You see, in the ordinary point of view, is that, well, it exists because I can observe it, measure it, and it is there. Here we see it is true what we say. That doesn't contradict those things, but saying it's possible for me to experience its existence.
And the observer is the observed.
An observer here always is the observed. It's always pure being itself. Pure being looking at itself, looking at its own appearance.
And perhaps important to acknowledge or point to the complementarity of the profound vision you offer, Hameed, which doesn't negate the fact that the iron or the metal iron had its origin in a starburst or in a supernova. Yes, and the fundamental being of the supernova and the iron. That's
Yeah, it does not negate any. All those are just the way we know them. You could measure them and look at them from a scientific perspective, a Darwinian perspective, and that's useful. However, we're delving into them in a different way. We're delving into them by knowing their ontological ground. You know, one thing, you know, to know is that science in general does not deal with ontology. In fact, scientists have been told by many scientists, it is not our field. We don't deal with ontology. We deal with how things behave, how they appear, how they behave. That's what science does, and does it well.
But ultimately, science is chasing its own tail, because they're pretty good with forms, but the formless and the knowingness and the consciousness is left out of the equation. So I think the last 30 years, you know, quantum physics has just been lost because it doesn't admit the dimensions that you're talking about, the ground of being.
Well, I mean, quantum physics, as you mentioned it, is one of the form of physics that comes closest to acknowledging there is something else beside the physical, which is the fact of the observer. That there has to be an observer and experience. There have to be, and that is not part of the theory. It is the theory dependent in it, but the theory doesn't explain the observer. And it is a big question now in quantum theory. What is that? Because you call it, you know, the collapse of the wave function. The collapse happens through the observer observing, making an experiment. But the theory itself doesn't explain what is this observer. How does the observer decide to make an observation?
And they don't like that. It really bugs them. That the observer,
but they're trying to explain it in all kind of ways, and there are many theories of consciousness actually that are made out by scientists. You know, trying to explain consciousness, because here they cannot deny consciousness. Consciousness is needed for quantum theory. Classical theory, like Newtonian, he didn't talk about those kind of things. He said that's how things are, you know. When you drop something, it just fall. He didn't say that the experimenter is needed for that. He said, you know, if the moon goes around the Earth, it just goes around it, whether we know it or not. Quantum theory says no. Only when you see that, and that's one thing Einstein didn't like. He said, "You mean? I mean, the moon doesn't go around the Earth unless I see it? That doesn't make sense." But anyway, you know, it is not the field of science. Maybe science at some point might find out they will have to come to a realm like this to be able to explain some of the phenomena they encounter. It is possible, but we're not close to that. We're not close to that, you know. And
Hameed, can I ask you the
I
question?
remember listening to Roger Penrose. You know, you hear Roger Penrose, the guy
Yeah.
who got the Nobel Prize for black holes. He's a British mathematician, physicist. He's into Einstein theory guy more than he's 90 something years old, but he's very clear and
He's
very,
very clear.
very clear. And basically, what he said, that I remember, I thought, well, that's very good. He has a theory of consciousness, you know, himself about microtubules, whatever, inside
Exactly.
the brain. He has it with Hameroff, who's more biologist. But he says, one thing I admired him because I thought he's a humble, he's really a realistic physicist. He said, you know, to talk about understanding consciousness, we have theories of consciousness, but we're way far from understanding what consciousness is. He said, we don't even know what matter is. Yeah, he said, we don't know what matter. He said, nobody knows what an electron is. You know how to measure its movement, but you don't know what it is.
And Hameed, my question I've always wanted to ask you because of your background in physics and obviously your intellectual brilliance is how close can mathematics take us to this realization of the ground of being presence? Can it get there? You mentioned one time you tried to do a mathematical statement explaining consciousness, but you said there are too many variables. You got, I mean, how far can mathematics, the scientific way of looking at things, get us to this realization of what we're talking about, the unity of all things, the presence, that which comes before everything?
Well, I don't know. At the present time, they're not trying to do that.
Yeah.
There's nobody trying to go to that direction. Whether it's possible, I don't know. I mean, the ancient mathematicians like Euclid and others, you know, before him, they were more in touch with that kind of realm, and they saw the physical world and the outer world. But you know, our modern scientists are more mind-oriented, and some of them are mystics, and they want to know about those things, but they don't know. I mean, David Bohm, for instance, tried to connect, you know, quantum theory with something like this, and he talked about the explicit order and the implicate order. That's very close to some. In the implicate order, what is the underlying thing? Implicate order, you know. Explicate order in the universe as we know it, as scientists measure it. The implicate order is implicit, it's there, we cannot measure it, we cannot see it. And he did that, and he was a respected theory of quantum theory. He wanted to go there, and then actually he's the one who had dialogue with Krishnamurti, if you know, discussing things like because he was interested, you know. But I don't think I don't know if he had the experience of pure beingness or not. Maybe he did, and that's why he did that. So I think science is depending on the scientists themselves, how much they have experience of it. By the way, the originator of quantum theory, like Niels Bohr, Heisenberg, Schrödinger, they all were interested in Indian philosophy, Indian mysticism, and because they thought there's more to reality than that. So they were aware of it, they knew there's such thing. And even, I think Heisenberg, who said, when they asked him about the physical world, whether that's reality, he said, no, no, this is just a small part of reality. He said consciousness is much bigger thing than that. So those people had an appreciation of that, but they didn't have a way to study it.
That's the problem.
They didn't have a way to study it. Whether science at some point will have a way to study it, be interesting. I think It is possible if they use the kind of inquiry we've been talking about. We need to use inquiry that looks not into matter, but into into the observer. Not into what is observed, but into the observer itself, experience itself. Then it's possible, I think. Maybe that's a way of entry into that. What I'm talking about is not just I know it. Many people know it. In my school, I taught many people that. I give teaching and all of that. So we talk about the community that we have. Many people in this community, many of the teachers know what I'm talking about. They can teach it. I mean, the books are an attempt to communicate it to the general public. But in the school, people can actually learn it through the practices and learn this to be the full experience of it. So it's important to know that I'm saying this for the listeners, that it is possible to learn this, not just to hear about it. To learn it and realize it and be it and experience it. And I think with the two of you, obviously you're getting some learning here. You're getting some experience by reading the book, by delving into the book deeply.
And one of the amazing things about the book is it's self-evident that you know these experiences, but the fact that you're able to language it at such a level, I think that has to be very unique. And that's part of what comes through you. You can talk about these things that are almost incomprehensible, but take us right to the edge where we begin to experience. I mean, it's just phenomenal. So
I think it has to do with the times. The fact that this elaboration, this detailed telling of the experience is happening is because I don't think it was that possible before. Our times have a lot to do with it.
why wasn't it possible before?
It's not just me. Well, there are a bunch of factors. One of them, many of the teachers thought that those should not be spoken.
You know that one.
And so to speak it is not good for the student. That will give the student the idea they try to run after these things and that you can't do that. So they thought it was like an antidote that I still, some teacher I talk with, they don't want to talk in this detail. They think it will prejudice their students. I tell them, what do you mean prejudice your student? Your student not learning as much as my student, and I'm talking, and because I'm talking, they're able to get it. Because it's so subtle, so unknown. Somebody talking about it, you point to it. You said, "Oh, there's this possibility. There's such and such a thing," and so they might try. True, people might try to go after it, but it won't work. They still have to do the practices. That is one thing. Why it wasn't before. And I think the culture is at the present time is a different. There are a meeting of many teachings. Present and many teaching, dialogue and with me, many teaching, and our psychology has developed language, and our philosophy developed language. All of these are have to be in place for this kind of communication, I think, to happen.
Right place, right time.
Yeah, so that's very important. It's not, I happen to be the instrument for it. I happen to straddle both worlds, the old world and the new world, the science and the non-science. So that gave me some kind of capacity to do it. My mind was honed that way, so I can speak it.
And Hameed, you mentioned something really so central and crucial, which is that these discussions are incredible and they're beautiful pointers And the goal is not understanding, or not only understanding, but realization, direct experience for ourselves. And that kind of the training to have these direct experiences is available through your diamond approach. And you've systematically laid out a training program for people to have the kind of realizations that you're from which you've sourced the material and to which you're pointing us.
Yeah, the reason I talk about it is not just talk about it. I want people to experience it.
Yeah.
I want people to share in the experience because it is the potential of all of humanity.
Yeah.
All humans have this at their potential possibility, and all teachings say that, of course. And all teaching, they're trying their best to help others get to it, to get to this kind of realm. This realm, many other realms, but this is one of the fundamental realms of experience, of awakening or realization.
Yeah. And in our discussion so far, centering around on pure presence, we've talked about the fullness of experience and the richness, the completeness that comes with that. And you also emphasize that it's a kind of like a two sides here. There's a one side in way which one way in which presence can be experienced is this fullness, completeness, and another side which isn't the opposite, but even though it may sound like is a kind of transparency or emptiness, a nothingness to pure presence. So perhaps you could speak to that side.
Yeah. You see, in what I call the first turning, when we experience presence in a more localized, limited way, presence tend to arise in spaciousness, space, what I call inner space. So there is always, with the fullness presence, there is the other side, which is the emptiness and spacious, but appears more like an empty space, like physical space, but it is inner experience space, clean, clear, transparent, clear. And usually the presence, whether it is the redness of strength or the brilliance of intelligence, or is the apricot, the fulfillment, usually arises within the spaciousness. See? And so it seems like, and the space, usually I think of it in the first inning as one of the manifestation of being. So one of being can be love or peace, but it can be just spaciousness, which is similar to space, empty, extended, infinite space. But the two things appear as if two things, the two different aspects, two different manifestations of being. There is the presence that appears within spaciousness. Spaciousness is needed. Like spaciousness is the clearing away the personality, the ego, so that there is a possibility of presence to emerge in one quality or another. In this dimension, the two things are inseparable. The presence and the spaciousness are inseparable. They are non-dual. They are interpenetrating. They're inside each other. And so usually we first encounter the fullness. We need to stay in the fullness for some time to recognize it is also nothing. So being and nothing turn out to be two sides of the same thing. But the spaciousness here appears a little different than the space that is distinct as a pure spaciousness within which arises forms of presence. Here, the spaciousness appears different. The way I look at it, I use mathematics here. The spaciousness and what I call the first turning, now we're talking about the second turning, what I call in this teaching, the boundless dimension is the second turning. So this pure being is part of the second and first turning, which are the qualities of presence emerging in space. The space that arise, I call it Euclidean. Euclidean space, meaning it is straight. Straight lines go straight. Euclidean mean flat. Like two-dimensional Euclidean space is flat, like a plane. And then it becomes three-dimensional, it's still flat. It is not curved. Like Einstein space can be curved. That means not Euclidean. See, Euclidean is completely straight. All lines are straight. The space here is non-Euclidean. I call it Riemannian. Riemann is another mathematician who developed non-Euclidean geometry, where the shortest distance, the shortest line between 2 points is a curve, not a straight line, because the space itself curves, just like Einstein spaces. It's called non-Euclidean geometry. So the space here is non-Euclidean. It's not flat. Hence, it is difficult to give it dimensionality, to give it how many dimensions, what's the dimension. So I call it nothing. Instead of calling space, I call it nothingness. It's a sense like being and nothing. Being is fullness. Nothingness is nothing there. Is the other side of it. And they're two sides of the same thing, like they're inside each other. They are like, if you take presence, which is, of course, has no end. If you could take, so let's say the presence that is in this room, and take it at any point, at this side here, you'll note that this side, the presence is also nothingness. One side is presence, one side nothing. If you come here, presence and nothingness. You come here, presence and nothingness. Here, presence and nothingness. So the nothingness is completely wed to the beingness, to the fullness. And the nothingness is amazing sense of freedom, lightness, and kind of, it is a purity, but it is what we find in this dimension is that being and nothing are not separate. There are two ways of knowing the same thing. So you could feel it as a fullness, or we could feel it as an emptiness. And the emptiness here, I call it nothingness. There are many kinds of emptiness in this teaching. I talk about space, Euclidean space. Now I'm talking about non-Euclidean space. I call nothing. The other kinds we'll talk later about. See? So the inner emptiness are many dimensions of it. And this pure presence reveals one of the main dimension, which is the feeling of nothingness. So you could feel fullness that has nothingness implicit in us, or the fullness can dominate. You're not even aware of the nothingness, or the nothingness can dominate. So everything is nothing. Everything is an expression of nothing. And nothing is transparent, clear, colorless, pure.
And Hameed, would you say that different traditions emphasize different sides of that? For example, I think of Vedanta, or Hinduism, as emphasizing the fullness, and perhaps Buddhism as emphasizing the nothingness. Is that?
I think there is a truth to that. When you listen to Vedanta or read their texts, they're talking about Sat, Chit, Ananta. Sat means being. Chit, the Sat, Chit, none of those is emptiness. Sat is being or truth. Chit is consciousness, and Ananda is joy or good feeling. So all these are characteristic of true nature, but none of them speaks about the emptiness. It's not like they don't know about the emptiness. It is not included in the name. Buddhists make emptiness be central to their teaching. which we will talk about in one of the chapters, but not this one. We get to talk about the Buddhist, what I call Buddhist emptiness. You know, the nothingness now comes close to the Buddhist emptiness, but it is not exactly what, because, if you, for instance, listen to the Dalai Lama or any one of those, they define emptiness as the non-existence of forms. This nothingness is not the non-existence. It is the other side of existence. It's the inner nature of existence. It does not negate existence, this nothingness. The Buddhist emptiness negates existence, which we will get to at some point in another chapter. Here, we talk about the whole realm of being, so it's closer to Vedanta, I think, than Buddhism here. Closer to Vedanta, close to Master Eckhart or Ibn Arabi, those people who talk about being or existence. Like Shabistari in his book, The Garden of Secrets, I think it's called. He talk about the ocean with no shores. Being, he said, an atom greater than the whole.
Another paradox.
Yeah, I love paradox. I love those paradoxes. It's a good book of poetry.
And Hameed, this pointing to something so the infinite, the fullness, the completeness, the transparency of presence has this feeling of something cosmic, vast, which it is, boundless, of course, as you describe. But then you beautifully bring it down to ordinary experience, pointing out that this recognition of pure presence, its fullness and emptiness or nothingness, it has a strange familiarity, and it's actually the familiarity, the recognition that this is actually the nature of our ordinary awareness.
Yeah. That's the thing. I remember having that experience at some point. After learning about the beingness and I remember experiencing my ordinary experience, and I'm aware of things, and I'm saying, what is this awareness of things? And I caught it. The awareness is made out of the same thing. It is a pure being that is aware. And it is the awareness. So it is true. We all have it. We're all sort of familiar with it, but without recognizing. It is an important point, because some of the teaching use that, of course, how you could follow your ordinary awareness to the fullness of pure awareness. So the thing about pure being, it has awareness and knowing. It knows itself, it knows it is being. It knows it is aware. It's not like just there without cognition. There's cognition. And our ordinary awareness has cognition. You see, that's why I say it's the same thing. Because our ordinary awareness, we're aware of something and we're able to know what it is. If we have denied, like I'm aware of my, for instance, calmness, and I know it's calmness. I'm aware of my pain in my knee, and I know it's pain in the knee. So there's awareness and knowing at the same time. And that is true in pure being. There's awareness and knowing at the same time.
So in nothingness, there's awareness. Yes?
Nothingness that is inseparable from being is awareness. It is the origin of ordinary awareness. If we follow ordinary, you see, put it this way. Sometimes I do a guided meditation, which is to help people say, well, pay attention to things, where this and that. And then I said, well, you're aware of these things, but you're paying attention to the capacity to be aware. You're not paying attention to what it is that is aware, what make you have that capacity. So what makes us have the capacity to be aware of some things? Because we usually think of always awareness of something. When you ask anybody, they're not just aware, they're aware of something. When they say, I'm aware, I'm conscious, they mean they're conscious of something. There are content to their experience. They're aware of content. The question, what gives them the capacity to be aware of content? That is the part that the theories of consciousness and science don't ask. They're studying consciousness seriously. Some of them, I mean, there are universities, many departments studying consciousness. But what they're studying is the capacity of the functioning of awareness, which is the perception. They're studying how perception happen. They're not studying what gives us the capacity to perceive. When I actually asked those cognitive scientists, they said, no, we don't study that. We just study. He said, that's ontology. That's not our field. No,
they're afraid of becoming
how
mystics.
things happen. We don't study what makes them happen.
Right. And you're pointing to something that you emphasize in the chapter, Hameed, which seems really striking, and that is that we tend to assume that awareness is simply a function or a process of knowing something. But
Right.
you say no, it's also an ontological, you quote, it is also an ontological reality.
Yeah, it is an isness. Awareness is something that we can recognize awareness for what it is. We can recognize the medium of awareness. We can recognize the medium of self-knowing awareness, the medium of awareness that perceives and knows what it perceives. You see, Dzogchen awareness, although they say non-conceptual, it has knowing in it, because it knows it is awareness, and so, and they, in fact, Yeshe has knowing. They talk about the Rigpa is a knowing consciousness. It's both knowing and conscious at the same time. So the Dzogchen perspective of what awareness is, it includes knowing. They don't talk about it that way. I talk about that, but it always includes knowing. So it is closer to this, to our ordinary awareness, because our ordinary awareness has capacity to know. So it gives us the perceptivity, but also gives us the cognitive capacity. And that comes from this dimension of pure presence, because it has both the perceptivity, the sensitivity, and the cognitive dimension.
So is this knowingness, is that conceptual? Is that a concept?
That's a big question. It will take an hour to discuss. Let's leave that till next time. We'll discuss it in detail. But in some sense, yes, in some sense, no, because the question of concept is not so simple. Most people say conceptual and they leave it at that, but it is really much more intricate and deep than that. So we need to it takes us time to decipher this. The important thing here is that there is no cognition and perception at the same time. There's awareness and knowing that are inseparable from each other. And that is a characteristic of pure presence. Pure presence is not, you know presence by being presence. Being and knowing are not two things. You see. So being is the same thing as knowing being. So but that is true about presence even from the first turning. When we know love, how do we know love? By feeling love, by knowing, by experiencing love. The experience and the knowing are inseparable. The beingness, the presence of it, and the knowingness of love are not two things. So love includes knowing of love. And so is compassion, so is contentment, so is peace. When you talk about peace, people say it's non-conceptual. Well, yeah, in some sense, but has knowing. Does knowing mean conceptual? Here is not what most people call conceptual. Most people call conceptual, they mean mental elaboration. And we'll get into that. But the thing here is that the cognitive dimension and the being dimension are two sides of the same thing. And that becomes clear in this dimension of realization, of pure presence.
So this is not anti-intellectual. It's not anti-concepts.
It's not anti-cognition, no, because
Okay.
there is cognition in it. It knows itself. I mean, if you don't know yourself, you call what Gurdjieff called a stupid saint. You are, but you don't know what you are. Here you are, and you know what you are. You know it fully, you know it completely. The knowing and the being are so intertwined, they cannot be separate. They are co-emergent, or two. I mean, we will discuss it next time about knowing, but the important thing here we're getting into is that the being of presence includes the knowing of presence. In fact, that's what's called gnosis. What is gnosis? Knowing by being, right? That's what gnosis mean. Noesis in the Greek. What do they mean by, why did they say gnosis instead of knowing? Because it is knowing by being, not knowing by observing.
Yeah, and in contemporary philosophy or even psychology, it would be described as a distinction between knowing by description and knowing by acquaintance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It will be like by acquaintance, but it is the intimate acquaintance, not just acquaintance, it's complete unity with it.
Yes, okay.
You're it, more. It is the absolute limit of acquaintance.
Yeah, yeah.
You
No one to be acquainted.
Yeah, because acquainted means there's somebody acquainted with something. Well, here, no, they're not two. It is just the being itself, knowing itself by being itself. Being itself and knowing itself is the same thing.
And I mean, you point to some of the implications of this recognition, and the recognition that the magnificence of presence in all its fullness and nothingness is our own awareness. You say, and I quote, that this recognition is an explosive insight and a momentous awakening.
Yeah, that is what most people call awakening. Awakening is the recognition of what our being is, of what our awareness is. Knowing our awareness is being, and being is awareness, and knowing it for what it is, and knowing it as the fullness and the emptiness, the two sides of the same thing. It's paradoxical when you bring nothingness and fullness together.
Mm-hmm.
It's paradoxical. But many philosophers have dealt with this paradox. And being and nothing, and but here being and nothing are not two sides, or are not two things. They are implicit in each other, and it is sort of a mystery, actually, when you think about it. It's not logical. The mind can't make. How can that be? Nothing is nothing. In fullness is fullness. How can fullness be nothing? But experientially. It is the case that you find that what you know directly is through noesis, direct knowing. what I call immediate knowing, knowing through immediacy. That's the other term. Instead of acquaintance, I call it immediacy,
Mhm.
knowing through immediacy, the immediacy of knowing, not by, observing at a distance, immediacy, by being in the middle of the experience, by being the experience, being the consciousness and the quality of the experience. So being and knowing, that's an important thing that we could come out of this. Being and knowing are the same thing here. Being knows itself because um, being is the cognitive, has a cognitive quality to it. No. So what shows that knowing and mind are fundamental. They're not just intellectual. This is not intellectual knowing. It's called noesis, but still, I mean, noesis is knowing. But it's not the knowing that psychologists or philosophers or scientists know. It's not knowing of facts. It's knowing of oneself.
It's not a concept, it's an experience, you said before.
It is experience, but it is an experience that has discrimination. It has knowingness, and it's a very clear, precise knowing. Without knowing being intellectual, not in the mind. The being doesn't emerge from the mind, it emerges from the being itself.
And the mind emerges from being.
It is a different kind of knowing. Most people
Yeah.
don't know this kind of being. Even if they have it, sometimes they don't know they're having it. I think human beings tend to have that knowing because it is natural to us. For most people are so dominated by their thinking mind, they don't recognize that there is a knowing that is implicit, that is natural.
Essential.
But it is awakening. When you know this knowing, you're awakened. You realize, you're enlightened.
And you point out, Hameed, that when there is this recognition of our ordinary awareness as being what it really is, then there's a profound kind of energizing or alertness, or it becomes awakened awareness. It becomes alive, lucid, clear, just takes on a much more awake, alive quality to it.
Yeah. And we realize that our awareness is everywhere too. Awareness that seems to fill our body or mind. When we recognize what it is, where this cognitive or perception capacity come from. When we wake up to that, we recognize what you mean. We recognize when the awareness looks at itself and says, "Oh, that's what I am." Transparent clarity. The moment you see that, you see it is really the nature of everything. That becomes aware. So awakening is always like that. You awaken to the nature of reality, not just to your nature.
And you also emphasize, Hameed, that along with this comes the recognition that, oh, the awareness has always been present. I actually was not, awakening was not lost. It simply wasn't recognized.
Yeah, it's more like awareness was always there, but I haven't awakened to what it is.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, I haven't seen what it is. Like awareness is there, but it's covered over by what we call sleep.
And here you're drawing very close analogies to what you mentioned before, and maybe we should clarify the terms for people. This is perhaps you're describing now the heart of the recognition or awakening of Dzogchen, which is often described as the highest form of Tibetan Buddhism. And that you used the term before, Rigpa, which is the term given to the pure awareness, the recognition of the awakened awareness.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Rigpa, they talk about as the true nature, of awareness, but it's implicit in it. It knows itself. They might not, emphasize that part, but it's implicit in the way they talk, because They don't say you're just aware of it, you know it for what it is.
And Hameed, I have one more question, and I'll stop asking all my questions. But you've said, and I have my bookmark, I wrote this down when I was reading the book, and it just stayed with me. You said that this realization, this awakening cannot be earned.
Yeah,
That's wow. And that sometimes practice is just reinforce or reifies the sense of separate self.
exactly. Well, it can't be earned because you're already that.
There's that. Mm.
And already that, you just awaken to it. That's the idea. That you're already that, you don't earn it, it is you. It is what you are. It's your being, your true being, your true awareness. And you just wake up to the fact, oh, I am this. I'm not just the body. I am something that makes the body aware.
Mm.
Yeah. And one of your recurrent emphases, Hamid, is that awakening is or awakening is a recognition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awakening is a recognition. Yeah.
Or remembering, possibly.
Yeah. Sometimes called remembering. Yeah.
Yeah.
Remembering meaning, because usually we say we forget, basically mean we're not recognizing the nature of our awareness. And so remembering is basically is like looking at the capacity and seeing where it comes from. Oh, it's not easy for most people. They can't just look back. Some teachers do. Okay, just look back and you'll see. It's not that easy. You probably know that. You can't just
Oh, yes.
aware.
I know that well.
People practice for years before they could do that. And it's true. It is, you just look back and know what it is. But there's so many things in the way. You see, that brings us to the obstacles against this realization. There are many obstacles
Mhm.
and many layers in the mind that make us not see the purity of our perceptual ground.
But
And
there also seems to be it's kind of recurrent in what you say, there's a guidance. You felt like you were being guided on this whole experience of awakening in all these dimensions. So there's some kind of unearned, to use a Christian term, grace that facilitates us being able to remember who and what we are.
Yes, in my experience, there was guidance for me. Doesn't mean everybody will experience guidance. In my experience, I happen to have guidance and all throughout, not just for this, throughout the whole journey. It's guided in the sense it is, it does it itself. My practice is clearing the way for it to emerge. The practice doesn't make it happen.
But we can work on ourselves, but we can't make it happen.
Yeah, and the practice is basically clearing the way. Whether it emerges or not is not up to you.
right. There's
Thank
a
God.
nice saying in Zen that enlightenment is an accident, but meditation makes you accident prone.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. Yeah.
I mean, let me ask a question here. We're a bit past the hour. There's a couple, as you you raised the question of whether we should try to get through all the chapter. There are a couple of significant things still left in the chapter, like reification and working through reification through inquiry. I'm wondering if we should leave that for another.
Yeah, and that will, I think we'll leave it for next time because we need to know about knowing, what knowing means and different levels of knowing and all of that to know about reification.
Well, another incredible dialogue, Hameed.
So we're having fun with this, and that's the point. We need to continue having fun. I like it that you're engaged because that makes me get engaged, If you're not
Exactly.
engaged, I won't be interested.
Oh no, we are super engaged.
We text each other.
That brings it out in me. You see, my being respond to your interest.
That's exactly it.
Always the case. My being responds to when it is called the response.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's beautiful. Yeah. Well, thank you, being. Yeah, and thank
Yeah.
you indeed. What a gift. I want to give to all the listeners. Yeah, yeah,
We're all being,
yep.
including our TV screen is being.
Right.
That's
Everything
true.
is being. Remember about the oneness?
Yeah,
Everything is being.
yeah. I'm just part of my practice now in Dzogchen practice or Mahamudra practice. Actually, at this stage, is just trying to sustain the recognition of everything. The term that's being used there is radiance. Everything is radiance.
Yeah, that's one way of saying it. And one of the way I've been writing a poem about it. So the way I would say it is that being peers through all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And I was talking to Roger during the break. I said, this transmission, this teaching, it's very, very affirming. It's deeply affirming of existence, of
Affirming that
reality.
you're real.
Yeah.
It affirms to you that you're real, you have real being, and you are an expression of the being of God.
Mm. Oh.
Well,
Okay, good.
that's a beautiful place to wrap it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll continue with this question of being and take it to its cognitive side, explore the cognitive side more completely next time, because that will take us to what are some of the obstacles, and how we understand mind and all, because people don't understand mind yet.
No.
Where mind come from?
No shortage of topics.
No, that's just, yeah. Hameed, thank you so much. We're so grateful to be here with you, and it's been just a great journey with us. And I would have never studied this book like I have unless we are going to have these conversations. But I just have to keep immersing, and I have all these things underlined from the first two times. And I said maybe I'll just read what's underlined, and then I go, uh-oh, I need to underline what I didn't underline the first two times. It's just like,
Yeah. Well, hopefully this immersion will help our listeners immerse themselves in
Yeah.
studying the book, because they have all these reflection, all these discussion to help them, immerse themselves in each chapter. Because
Yeah.
true, they're not easy thing to penetrate, those chapters.
Yeah, and I also I realized I would like to emphasize more the opportunity of encouraging people to go through the program, and in addition to the listening and the reading. So yeah,
Whatever way they can do it, of course, because there are practices, there are teaching, there are guidance, there are teachers. And this school, but many other schools have teaching, and they do it a different way. But if you want to learn it this way, this school does it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Ah, well, Mead. It's a gift to.
Good seeing you guys.
Yeah.
I've been away. It seems like it's been forever. I've been gone. It feels like I've been gone for 5 years. It was only 5 weeks.
Well, sounds like it was a rich and full time, so that's wonderful.
It was, yeah. And
Great.
so is now.
As now, yes.
Rich with being.
Rich with being.
Now rich with being, not with events, with being.
Yes.
Yeah.
May it always be so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. See you next time.
Here I am, John Dupuy again, and I'm here to talk about supporting the Deep Transformation Podcast. The podcast has been an amazing experience for Roger and myself and for our team, and it's been growing. We're currently in the top 2% of worldwide podcasts, which is really remarkable. We think it's very important. We think deep transformation is the only way to go, because if we don't, we're in serious trouble. We're so grateful for the amazing presences and spirit and soul and people who've been on our podcast. We'd also like to ask you again for your support, financial support, and thank you for all of you who have been supporting this. And up till now, it's all been out of pocket for Roger and myself, and it takes money to produce. pay our staff, and for marketing. The circle keeps on growing, but the quicker that could happen, the more positive effect we could have in the world. And that's what we're here to do. And I was thinking before this, upstairs in my meditation room, I have the famous 10 Zen ox herding pictures up there. And the final one, after guys go through all this journey, is going back into the marketplace with open hands and open heart. So that's what we're trying. Open hands, open heart, open mind, so that we can do what? We can transform effectively and deeply and listen to some of the greatest minds on our planet as to how to do that. So thank you for your support. We love you and you matter. God bless.